Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Baltimore Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers podcast. Hi, I'm Kipp Snow. I'm the director of the Transportation Distribution and Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County. We are in episode 8 of our
Episode
podcast.
episode 8. We can count this week. That's good. Hey everybody, I'm Mike Singer, community manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. We are a local maritime advocacy group. We help to promote just about everything to do with the Port of Baltimore. And so we wanted to make a podcast, just another way of getting information out, disseminated to folks, because not everybody's on Instagram or Twix, as I'm calling it now, or Facebook. You know, plenty of people don't like Facebook, and sometimes it's funny how it sorts things, and you post something, it disappears. So now we can have a podcast that we can do every week, and folks can count on it coming out on a weekly basis. So yeah,
Mike, you got a fancy mic.
I do. Does it? I'm not used to this big. It's kind of. Well, it's funny because I started out over here and I was like, "Oh, we can't have it blocking the logo." No, that's just not.
All right, I might have to take a look at that. You got some.
I'll send you the deets.
Oh, okay, that'll be helpful. Thank you. All right, we've got a pretty packed show today. We've got quite a number of things. We've got a guest coming, so let's go ahead and get started. You've got some updates and ship spotting this week.
Yeah, so let's get to that's our typical first segment. Just kind of hey, what's going on with shipping? Can't use that. That's somebody else's name of their podcast.
That's right. Yeah,
famous guy.
Retract the last statement.
I'll get a message. Yeah, I retract my last statement. So a big Zim container ship came in and is still in town, and so it's the first Zim container ship back in town since the bridge accident. Here, let me see if I can show you a picture here. What's interesting, so there it is from the live stream snapshot. What's interesting is there were no imports again. Now, this is just, we talked about what was it? The Ever, not Forward. What was it? It was a F class Evergreen ship. And that one had no imports either. Now I don't have the stats for all of them, but do have a source at the port, and every once in a while he'll give me some details. So no imports, so no discharge from this one ship. But I mean, so it's just one ship, but it does kind of make a point that the imports just aren't back yet like they were. If you were to go to BaltimoreShipwatchers.com, go to the links tab. Third one down is container ship schedule. There's a little arrow next to June. Click that over to July. I should be showing you this. That was my plan, but it's not happening. And then you'll see that the July schedule is really filling up. Okay. So that's really cool. There's
still kind of in line with what I was saying before, is that while the ships are running, so some of those routes take time to repopulate or to sell those particular lanes. So it does take a little bit of time, or some temporary contracts that were put in place during that time period still have to finish and play out in order for the new ones to be put in.
Yeah. And so this I thought was interesting. 1,630 empties to be loaded. So yeah, I guess that's just the normal flow of goods, and the empties need to come back to the port. All the truckers probably bring back an empty, and then 70 loads. So 70 going out. That's not a lot. I think last week we had in that Evergreen ship, there were like 600 or 700. Yeah, but we didn't have it differentiated between exports and empties. So
Sure.
1,630 empties. Wow.
So
So at least they're coming to get the stuff. I mean,
right. So part of that we I think we kind of discussed on a previous episode of the trade deficit, and this is still another example of what has to be done in order for the full balance of trade to flow through. You've got you've got products that have come into the U.S. with in containers, and
Mm-hmm.
they get delivered to their final destination. Well, these warehouses just aren't going. They don't just keep those containers, on property. They're rented or borrowed, or they're owned by another asset company, and they get taken elsewhere. So if it's one of those rented containers, they've got to go back. And
Mm-hmm.
what the freight forwarders attempt to do is fill those backhaul lanes of those containers back to the origin. Well,
Right.
where are we buying a lot of our products? The Asian market. Are they buying
Mm-hmm.
products from us? Not in the same amount. So it's very
Right.
difficult to to deal with all these that this mass flow of containers coming to the U.S. And it's almost to the point where it's cheaper for them to just continue to make them over in the Asian market and just fill the you know and not to
Hmm.
that exact extreme measure, but it's cheaper to build it than it is to ship them back empty. So it's a very
That's
difficult issue that we have to continue to address with our imbalance of trade.
wow. That's interesting. I didn't really think about that. And then for the thing that may only interest me segment, we had an interesting looking. Okay, that's next. I jumped ahead of myself. So the thing that may only interest me is that the let's see, the Samagrat. This is one of those. It's I like to call them a paper ship, but they bring in a lot of boats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this was the first ship that was stuck here because of the bridge that came back.
Wow.
So somebody was paying attention to it. It wasn't me. Somebody pointed it out to me. I I didn't catch that when somebody, hey, check this out. So, but it just left this morning. So
Okay.
that was interesting. They got stuck here for how many weeks, and they signed up for more and decided to come
They
back.
take their chance to come back.
Crazy kids. So and then I saw this come across the camera this morning. And I like, what in the world is that? Like a Zumwalt tanker? Look at that thing. Look at the bow. Can you see that?
It's
It's a
impressive.
what is it called? A dreadnought bow. It's like reversed. It
Right.
points down. Yeah, that's wild looking. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then so they're still bringing stuff off the bottom. Uh, took the boat out yesterday and followed behind one of the big conroes as it
Mm-hmm.
was leaving. Took a few pictures. Should have them here. I don't. But so check this out. That's today. They're pulling another beam off the bottom still.
Mm.
So it'd be fascinated to know how they find this stuff. How do they know? If the bottom's flat and at 50 feet, how are they finding this stuff? I mean, we can guess there's some kind of is it magnetometer? Is that the correct term? That they're
They've also
using
got
using.
some. They've also got
Hmm?
some, sonar and scanning equipment that just help, that were they able to scan through the water to be able to check that over and over.
Right, but can it pick up metal in the mud? So what I'm saying is if the bottom is flat and at 50, so then whatever they're picking to me tells me that it's below the mud line, which is what they said in their statement that, hey, we're going
Right.
to go ahead and open this up, and it's open, but we're still going to be picking stuff all from below the mud line. So this is interesting to be able to see it,
Mm-hmm.
them still doing this work.
Pretty fascinating. Pretty busy this week.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, there's 2 container ships out there right now, and if, not including the Dali, of course. Dundalk Marine Terminal had five ships over there yesterday, the day before. So things are moving. So yeah, I think
Okay.
coal is back to normal. Cruise ships are back to normal. I I don't know about row volume, but the quantity of ships that are here tells me it's looks like it's back to normal.
Back to
Um,
business.
yeah, container ships are coming back, but again, yeah, nowhere back to their normal level. We should be seeing anywhere between 3 and 4,000 transactions a day at Seagirt. That's what they normally. There's a little statistic that they put out daily, and so that's what we should be seeing. And nobody's saying 3 to 4,000, so I'm suppose it's the numbers significantly less than that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it for what's happening at the port this week.
All righty.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a guest speaker coming today.
We we
You want
do.
to give us little intro on our guest speaker?
Yeah, so we're gonna have Alexander Giles with us. We thought we'd have him on today to, help us understand the legal issues behind as they pertain to the Dolly crew members, right? Because we've heard that they were going to be released on Thursday, and then we heard the city is suing to stop them. For the people who have been hurt by the disaster,
Mhm.
because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to question them once they left the country. Um, so so Alex has been a maritime attorney in the Port of Baltimore for 27 years.
Okay.
So some know him as the terminal operator, stevedore attorney in Baltimore. So
Great.
um, yeah, so it'll be great to have him on and get some real expert knowledge.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and
Hmm.
bring him in, and we'll go ahead and get started with some interview and some questions.
Good, sounds good.
All right. That'll,
Hey, so let's welcome Alexander Giles. Hey, Alex, how are you today?
I am doing well.
Cool. So, we wanted to have you on just to kind of help paint the picture of help us understand what's going on with the legalities of the Dolly crew. Um, could you just so we already told a little bit about told a little bit about you and what you do, but so can you give us a little background, like what does a maritime attorney do? Like what kind of issues do you help with or involved in, or court cases? What?
Oh, well, so I've been doing this for 27 years,
Mhm.
and everything under the sun that
Mm.
happens on the water in terms of ocean commerce. So everything that you can think of that happens on land, whether it be real estate, might be a property issue, might be a personal injury matter, might be a contract. All of that happens with regard to ocean commerce as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm involved with all of that. As I think I mentioned to you guys separately, and I don't know whether
Mm-hmm.
you included it already or not, but for
Mm-hmm.
the lack of a better description, I'm sort of referred to or known as the terminal operator stevedore attorney in Baltimore. I've represented a bunch of the terminal operators over the years, and two of my biggest clients are Ports America Chesapeake, who I've represented my entire career, and Trade Point Atlantic, which is a relatively new client, but um, so that's generally what I do. I mean, I do a lot of other things beyond that, but if the bread and butter stuff is, if let's say cargo is dropped, which of course would not be the fault of Ports America or Trade Point Atlantic, but if
Mm-hmm.
cargo was dropped, then obviously there would be a cargo damage claim that would be brought in. I'd be
Hmm.
involved with that. If for some reason a longshoreman or an over the road trucker were to be injured while visiting one of the terminals, I would be involved with that. If there's bill of lading issues in terms of cargo, I have involvement with that. If there's crane damage, if there's demurrage, detention, I mean, there's just a lot of issues, and
Right.
we do things. Rule B, Rule C, Rule D. Rule C, arrest of vessels. Rule B, attachments of property and vessels. Rule
Wow.
D, arrest of cargo
Sounds like
disputes.
a couple podcasts all by itself.
Probably, you probably could.
Real quick, I want to when you're talking about who your job and the types of
Sure.
things, we cover what a bill of lading is and how you fill it out and the importance within some of our classes.
Right.
What would, for somebody who's interested in going into maritime law, is that what can you, like, in a sentence, summarize, like what is it that they have to do in order? Is it just schooling? Is it just law school? What for somebody who's wanting to enter that? What should they do?
I don't know if I can put it together in one sentence, but what I would say is that anyone can become a maritime attorney if you're interested in it and you show proficiency in it and you learn it. But in terms of your background, obviously going to law school, you need to do that. I went to the University of Baltimore. The University of Baltimore at the time, and I think still now, only offers one maritime law class. There are other schools around the country, like Tulane down in New Orleans, which have a full program that 20 some classes in maritime law, all aspects of maritime law.
Interesting.
You can take either the undergrad law school JD, or you can take an LLM there. But a lot of people that are in the maritime law industry, so to speak, have had some sort of touch point with Tulane. But my background was, my dad was in the Coast Guard for 24 years and retired as a captain in 1991.
Cool.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
So as we get into the Dali and it being stuck here, and I think most people probably don't even know 25% of the issue or what's going on, going on in the background legally, and so earlier this week I heard, okay, so they've given the crew permission to leave, and then I heard, well, the city is suing on behalf of people who are affected by the bridge coming down to keep them from leaving, because they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to question them once they got out of the country. They'd never see them again. So, and just for a noob, somebody who really doesn't have a clue about law,
Sure.
Why was it the city? Why was the city involved?
All right. So let's back up to the incident. The incident happens early morning hours of March 26th. And obviously Coast Guard comes on the scene, NTSB comes on the scene. The P&I club that represents the ship owner and the ship, which is Britannia, they obviously appoint counsel, and everyone starts getting involved with the early stages of the investigation. The owner, Grace Ocean, and its manager, Synergy, ended up filing the petition for limitation of liability. They filed that on April 1st. Which is about 6 days after the incident. And as part of that filing, the judge who reviewed everything at the time enters an order which basically creates a deadline for claims. And so the deadline for the claims was set for September 24th, and that's still the deadline. So people that have claims must bring them. If they don't bring them in the limitation of liability proceeding and the limitation goes forward, they're out of luck. They've lost their claim. So it's not like, normal cases, there might be a 3-year statute of limitations for someone to bring a case. In a limitation of liability, there's a claims deadline. If you don't file your claim by the time, then you're out of luck. Or you need to seek an extension from the judge after the fact, which is very rarely given, but can be given if circumstances are proper. But so we haven't reached that deadline yet, and there's going to be lots of claims that are going to be filed. But and at the moment, I think there's only 3 claims that have been filed. But one of those claims that has been filed is by the mayor and the city of Baltimore. And I think you may recall there was the story that came out probably, I mean, so they filed it on April 22nd. So it probably was just prior to that. And they talked about, oh, we're getting these hot shots from around the country. They're going to represent the city, and they're great attorneys, and so those people have come on board, and they filed the claim that was filed on April 22nd. And as you sort of alluded to, they've made certain claims. I would say that in looking at their claims, they're all basically economic loss claims, and that becomes important because there's Supreme Court case jurisdiction or precedents from 1927, a case called Robbins Dry Dock, which basically stands for the proposition that if all you have is economic loss damages as the result of a negligent act by someone else, where you're not directly injured, you can't recover. And there are many people that are looking at this incident and saying this might be the time to challenge Robbins Dry Dock. And I imagine that's what the city's thinking.
Precedent.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine that's what the city's thinking, because based on existing law, their claims get thrown out. I think most of their claims get thrown out. Maybe not all of them, but most of them. And they're obviously accomplished attorneys. They'll have an opportunity to make their case. But so that's the reason why they knew, because once you file a claim, then your attorneys are receiving notification every time something's filed in the litigation. So they knew, and they're included on any correspondence that counsel for the petitioners, for the vessel owner, were sending. Bill Bennett is sort of the lead attorney. He's a gentleman from Blank Ground, very good attorney, a good friend of mine. But he's the lead attorney for Grace Ocean, and he was the one that he sent an email in April, basically saying the crew's going to be on board for a long time. We're not sending them back anywhere. You'll have an opportunity to take their deposition. If circumstances change, then we will let you know, and you'll be able to note their deposition and preserve their testimony. And so, the people that got that email said, oh, okay, great. He'll let us know, and we'll have enough time to note deposition whenever that changes. And so the email, that the change of circumstance email, was sent on Tuesday, the 18th, that said CBP and Coast Guard and FBI have determined that these 8 of the 21 crew members are free to go. And we're going to start sending them home starting on the 20th. And
so could I stop you there?
Sure, absolutely.
So why 8? Why those 8? Why are they different than the other 22?
Yeah, so on 21 person crew, there are certain, I'm going to call them role players. The cook, the steward, able-bodied seamen that don't really have much responsibility. They're doers. And so they have been vetted, as I understand. I don't have firsthand knowledge of this, but just based on what I've read and what I understand, that they have been vetted in terms of security detail, in terms of what they know. They've all been interviewed by FBI, NTSB, U.S. Coast Guard as part of the investigation. But they've been determined that they're safe to send home. The more senior individuals, the master, the first mate, the deck officers, the engine staff, obviously, they're the ones that are not being sent home.
Right. Oh.
At least not yet.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Now I'm confused. So the 8 are people that can go?
So that was the email that was sent by Bill Bennett to all counsel that were involved with the case, more actively involved with the case, that these 8 have been cleared to go, and so we're going to start
Okay.
sending them home on the 20th.
Okay. So the issue was that attorneys haven't had their chance to talk to them, right? Is that
That's correct. So
okay?
the city and its counsel and a claimant who actually hasn't filed a claim, but a claimant by the name of Damon Davis, who is represented by Billy Murphy, among others. People probably here in Baltimore know the name Billy Murphy.
Sure, of course.
Plaintiff's counsel, criminal counsel. So he was both the city and Damon Davis filed emergency requests to prevent those 8 from leaving.
Oh,
and requested an opportunity to take depositions before they were permitted to leave.
got it. Okay. So, so you can. I mean, I have no clue how protocol process how any of this works. So, for the keyboard warriors out there on Facebook and the internet,
Sure.
why haven't these people been talked to? It's been 3 months.
So, well,
can you just explain the process or the order of operations? Or
so looking at it from the outside, I represent some people that are tangentially involved in this incident, but that are not. I don't represent the pilot. I don't represent the ship. I don't represent the city. I don't represent the state. But I do represent other individuals or other parties, entities rather. So I would say, and this is, when this all happened, I was sort of guessing as to what Judge Berdar would say and what he would do and what points he would raise and, how would he take certain counsel to task. When the April 12th email was sent by Bill Bennett to all counsel at that time and said, the crew's not going anywhere. You'll
basically, don't worry.
We'll tell you, we'll give you enough warning, as much warning as we can, and you'll have an opportunity to take their depositions. What counsel should have done, in hindsight's 2020, but what counsel should have done is they should have noted the depositions at that time. And Bill Bennett probably would have pushed back and said, "Hey, look, I just sent you the email. It's not necessary. It's a little too early." And you go, "Okay, fine.
It's cool.
It's
Chill
cool.
out."
Yeah, exactly. We're just crossing, the T's, dotting the I's, whatever. But then when the ship got moved from its position at the Key Bridge back to Seagirt Marine Terminal, counsel definitely should have at that point said, "Okay, the ship's now back at the dock.
I have access.
We have access to these. They're not allowed off too far off.
Right.
Visa issues, whatever. But we can get on there easily. We can just go to Ports America and Seagirt Marine Terminal, and then we can get on board the ship. Whereas before it was sitting out in the middle of the Patapsco. But they didn't. They just sort of sat around. And so quite honestly, I thought the judge was going to take them to task, and he didn't this morning when in the hearing. He didn't do that, or at least not on that issue. But so what happened was that Bill and one of his colleagues, who are again lead counsel for the ship, they're in Singapore at the moment, and so it's a 12-hour time difference. But so he was negotiating with one of the opposing counsel about conditions that the claimants would like to receive as assurances that the crew members, the 8 crew members, as well as the other 13, whenever they get to that point of being released, will be produced at a location or time as is mutually agreeable. But they'll be produced. There's a guarantee that they'll be produced. And then certain other documents into their backgrounds in terms of personnel files and things of that nature will be produced so that counsel can prepare for those depositions ahead of time. And what we learned this morning during the court hearing was that an agreement was reached yesterday afternoon about dinner time around 6:00. And about 10-15 minutes after that agreement was reached and the deal was struck, counsel for the city I think his name is Adam Levitt, sort of is the lead counsel for the city. He filed a motion to withdraw his
Right.
emergency request. Billy Murphy, on behalf of the claimant Damon Davis, did not. And so the judge, Judge Berdar, who again is a very good judge, used to be the chief judge, he and his staff tried tracking down Billy and his associated counsel, as a gentleman from Charleston, West Virginia. Tried getting both of them on the phone to say, "Do you agree with this? Have you reached? Are you part of the agreement? Are you withdrawing your motion?" And couldn't reach them. And then someone from Judge Berdar's staff got in touch with an underling who said that that they were still discussing it with their client. And so Judge Berdar said, "Well, we're moving forward with the hearing tomorrow." I mean, I can't cancel the hearing if someone still has a pending emergency motion, which had merit. I mean, it had enough merit for me to decide to schedule something. And so finally, at 9:28 this morning for a 10 o'clock hearing, Billy Murphy, actually, I guess the attorney affiliated with Billy Murphy, filed a motion to withdraw. But at that point, the judge had already entered an order. His initial order required certain counsel for certain clients to show up. And included within that list was counsel for CBP, counsel for NTSB, counsel for DOJ, counsel for the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so there were seven government attorneys that were there present.
That's a tremendous amount to try to have to organize and manage just to get to that one point, and so that helps to further explain that it's not just a one stop, one and done type transaction.
No.
So am I out of bounds by saying that their time was kind of wasted?
Oh no, you're not out of bounds by saying that at all.
That?
Yeah, everyone's time was wasted. Unfortunately, I mean, the judge had canceled, and he made reference to this. He had to cancel several hearings that were previously scheduled so that he can take care of this emergency matter. And then, as of 9:28, he realized it was no longer an emergency matter, but basically he took the opportunity out, and I'll just say it this way: he took the opportunity to let people know how his court will be run, and that it's his court, and that people are expected to get on board, or else we're going to have problems going forward. And
there will be consequences and repercussions.
Yeah, and I'm sort of.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to.
No. I'm sort of surprised that Billy Murphy. Everyone that knew Billy Murphy was expecting Billy Murphy to stand up and sort of do Billy Murphy type things, which is he likes to sort of argue and grandstand a little bit. He's a good attorney, don't get me wrong, but he likes to grandstand a little bit, and he has little rope-a-dopes with judges every now and again. And I thought there was a chance he was going to get up and try to spin something, and that if he did, that Judge Berdar was going to hold him in contempt and throw him in jail. But we didn't have that. We didn't have that situation. It was, Judge Berdar basically let everyone know what his expectations are going forward. And I would say that if anyone runs afoul of it going forward, that they're already aware of what the repercussions are.
Very interesting. So I got to tell you, most of this is kind of way over my head, but you're talking about it, and I'm saying to myself, "Wow, that's an awful lot that goes into it, the background of information of what happened and who did what in what order." And man, I'm glad you're here, because how would people know all these details if you didn't join us today? So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to be here. And I would say that so Judge Berdar is a U.S. District Court judge. His courtroom is on the 5th floor of the courthouse there at 101 Lombard Street, West Lombard Street.
Mhm.
His courtroom was completely packed today. And there were, I counted 17 attorneys. I'm sorry, 16 attorneys. 16 attorneys sitting at the tables, council tables, between the government attorneys, between the city's attorneys, between Damon Davis's attorneys, between the petitioner's attorneys. And then in the bench area, the 4 or 5 rows of bench seating, there were many other parties with counsel. So once you get to the point of September 24th and everyone's filed the claim that's going to file a claim in a timely manner, think about hearings and proceedings at that point, about all the counsel that need to be involved. And I imagine that Judge
So does it
Berdar,
all happen at once, and you rent out the you rent out the convention center? I mean, or is it one
they
at a time? How
do
does it?
well.
I have no clue.
Yeah, no.
Obviously,
So they have a ceremony.
shaking his
They
head,
have a
Mike. You're stupid.
ceremonial courtroom on the 1st floor. And what I was going to say is, I imagine, which is a lot larger than any of the other courtrooms. So I imagine what they may consider doing is moving proceedings down to courtroom 1A to host things for this particular case, because there's going to be tons of attorneys. There are going to be tons of corporate representatives. Once you get into the hearings about whether Robbins Dry Dock applies, privity and knowledge, some of the key sort of things that need to be determined in this limitation of liability proceeding. And then you start looking at what's the limitation fund. Are people going to basically try to object to the valuation that was put on the limitation of liability by the vessel in terms of, the book value of the vessel or the freight that was being transported or the amount of the salvage or the amount of the repairs. So I mean,
Wow.
there's lots of issues, lots and lots of
Wow.
issues.
Wow.
Hmm.
I got some more questions here that were handed to me by I got a list like this from a friend that
Okay.
we all know. That I texted before we came on.
Well,
And
hopefully that
so
friend of yours takes it easy on me.
so here's kind of an interesting, and I'll define this in the middle. What responsibility does a flag state? Now, people who are listening might not know what that means. So, a ship that's registered in another country, right?
Yeah,
What responsibility does a flag state bear in relation to the crew and the vessel in this instance?
they do. They have responsibility. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the flag state for this particular ship is Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at international maritime law and inspections, things of that sort, you look at crewing responsibilities. The flag state is one of the areas or one of the jurisdictions that has say into how things are regulated. So both Singapore law and their
Mm.
requirements with regard to ships that are documented in their country
Ah.
will have say and will have some jurisdiction. Obviously, the fact that this incident took place in the United States, the U.S. is going to have some jurisdiction between the
So
Coast Guard.
is there like some conflict, gnashing of teeth, meet in the middle? Are there a bunch of things that are, the United States says this and Singapore says this, and how?
And I'll be honest, I'll be very candid with you, because I do not represent the ship. I have not looked at the differences
Okay,
between U.S. law and Singapore law to figure out
sure.
whether any of them will become a red button item.
Mm.
Usually, there's not. Usually, there's another overlay beyond Singapore law and beyond
Uh-oh.
U.S. law, and that's international
Another
treaties.
overlay, Alex.
Yes, exactly. International treaties, ISPS, SOLAS, IMO treaties.
Mm.
There's lots of things that go into play in terms of you know, how a ship is prepared and made seaworthy, and
Wow.
that will all, at some point during this litigation, during this limitation liability proceeding, become an issue.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Uh, darn, I had one and I lost it. All right. So if it's determined that there, oh no. All right. Let me go back. So we heard that a generator failed. Is that the right? I think it was generator failed at the dock, and that they didn't. The ship didn't report it. One or those two things correct? And so then, were they required to report it by the company or by the Coast Guard? Can you elaborate on any of that?
So I know from reading the NTSB preliminary report that there were 4 power outages. There is also in that NTSB a rather, and I'll call it intricate, because I wouldn't call myself electrical savvy in terms of, you know, breakers and
Mm-hmm.
buses and all that thing, and
Mm-hmm.
electrical lines, and, you know, open breaker, closed breaker. But there was a lengthy description. If you go grab the NTSB preliminary report and you have that sort of scientific electrical background, you can easily read
Mm-hmm.
it and make sense of it. But the short of it was that there were two, there
Is
were,
that a pun?
yeah, there were 4 total power losses.
Mm-hmm.
2 happened at the dock, and 2
Kipp
happened,
just got that.
yeah, two happened while the vessel was under voyage on the
Mm-hmm.
early morning hours of March 26th. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of reporting the 2 that happened while it was at dock, um,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily. They should have probably put it in their logbook. I don't know whether that happened or not.
Mm-hmm.
I have, and again, a lot of my information in this regard, because I don't represent those individuals and I wasn't present for the investigation,
I got you.
is secondhand. It's things that I've read based on, you know, Baltimore Sun, the Daily Record, the Baltimore
Mm-hmm.
Banner, WBAL, CNN,
What? Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Whatever source. Yeah.
yeah. So the first 2 incidents of power loss, or the breakers being um, um, basically closed when they should have been, or open when they should have been closed, whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
were due to employee error. And then it dealt with closing of one of the dampers that then caused an electrical hitch, basically. And so when a situation like that happens, and it happens, it's not, you know, it's not out of the norm. You know, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that don't have maritime understanding or don't understand the industry think, "Oh my God, you know, the ship lost
How could
propulsion."
you
Well, the ship
possibly
loses
do
propulsion every
something
now and
wrong?
again. Yeah, right. These things happen,
Mm-hmm.
sadly, but it does happen. But
Mm-hmm.
so there was an explanation, a reasonable explanation, as to why they lost power. One of our
Hmm.
crew members screwed up. They closed the damper when they shouldn't have, and it caused an overload.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, "Oh, well, then go fix that. Open up the damper again." And I think Jennifer Hamady, who's the NTSB chair, mentioned during one of her press conferences that, you know, after the preliminary report was issued, she mentioned, she goes, those 2 power outages that happened at the dock are unrelated to the 2 power outages that happened while under voyage.
Hmm.
So, you know, there's a
Hmm.
lot of people that are trying to draw a connection between the 2. And at
Mm-hmm.
least as of yet, and we haven't heard from the NTSB directly in a couple of weeks, but
Right.
when she last reported, they were reporting that there was no connection between the 2. Now,
Interesting.
maybe they continue with their investigation. I'm sure they do. They continue
Mhm.
testing everything.
Right.
And maybe they come to a different conclusion at some point. But at the moment, they're totally unrelated. Um,
Wow. Okay.
and And I think as part of the explanation in the preliminary report is the fact that you basically have two sides of breakers, and you only need to use one. And so,
Mm-hmm.
because of the issues that they were having at the dock, they flipped it from one side to the other side. And they figured, okay, we haven't used the other side in voyages recently, so it should be fresh. And
But
maybe,
it wasn't
and
tested,
right,
or
or right, exactly.
Hmm.
yeah,
Um, and
interesting.
I don't know, quite honestly. I never served on ship, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm not quite sure how you would test it under voyage conditions while not
Right.
being at voyage, while not being
Yeah,
at
and
sea.
I'm trying to think of the wording, the correct wording. And I do have a friend who was a maritime engineer, um, and he wrote me up when he read that report. He wrote me a whole long that was kind of scathing and kind of interesting, but I guess we won't cover that. So, but probably one last. Thank you so much for all that,
Sure.
because that's right, not what people are thinking. So thank you for clarifying that. So one last thing, and this is kind of a loaded. So if it's determined that there's criminal negligence, so who would be responsible? Crew member, individual who cleared them for departure, the company, one of the companies, one. How many companies are involved? There's the owner of the ship. There's the
Managers.
manager. There,
Right.
and what would the consequences be, or is there any way to fathom? I guess, no pun intended.
Yeah. So, as of the moment, up to date in terms of what I've read, that the
Mm-hmm.
FBI has determined that there is no criminal intent, no terrorism involvement, no hacking involvement. So
Correct.
then it would be a question of whether any of the crew members' actions were so repugnant that what normally might be a regulatory fine becomes a criminal matter. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that aspect, and that would be a U.S. Coast Guard, NTSB, and DOJ issue.
Mm-hmm.
If in terms of holding the owner responsible, if this was something that emanated from the top of the top, and they were made aware of the fact that it was having these issues at the dock, or maybe it had previous issues that were similar, and yet they were saying sail, don't worry about that, it'll be fine. And
Mm.
again, I'm just sort of,
Right. You're just
hypothetically speaking, I have no knowledge that any of that exists. um,
understood.
but
Appreciate you
if it
clarifying.
but if it does, then yes, there are criminal statutes that could be used both in the United States and in Singapore. I mean, this is where the port state control comes into effect. I mean, if we're talking about Grace Ocean and Synergy, sort of directing them to sail in light of the known problems, if they were known problems, um,
If that happened,
right,
if they directed them in
right,
such, yeah.
then they could be subject to criminal repercussions.
Wow.
The
So,
real quick back on the claims, and what about for the product owners, so those people who may be involved as a shipper or recipient, based on the
Mm.
Incoterms of the contract to sail, or that is there possible that whoever was responsible at that point in time could be also be making some claims?
in terms of the cargo that's on the
Yeah.
Dali that was bound for, well, I'm sure, basically almost everyone's going to have some sort of claim.
Okay.
And, uh, that can be dealt with contractually. There will be people that will receive the cargo because they need it. There will be
Right.
people that will receive the cargo because it's not cargo that would deteriorate or anything like that. But there may be hazardous materials. There could be, other cargo that, I needed this in April and I'm now in July and I've lost the sale, so I'm
Right.
I'm declining it. But there's also going to be the whole process, and this is another legal overlay, if you like that term, There's the whole thing with general average, which is
Oh,
an area of law that dates back to the Phoenicians, and basically stands for the principle that everyone in a voyage shares in the demise. And so when an incident like this happens, or a ship sinks or something like that, you spread out the cost of salvage and cost of repair over everyone that has an interest on board. And it's all, you value what your cargo is, and then in relationship to everyone else's cargo, it's sort of like a pro rata share of what
right.
you
A
contribute.
ratio of
Yeah, and there's
now.
defenses to general average. I mean, the ship is the one that declares general average, and the cargo owners will fight against general average because they're like, hey,
I
I don't
would.
want to contribute more money, and
Yeah,
That's the
I
but
chance.
already lost my cargo, and
Yeah,
it's 3 months late at least.
right,
that's the chance you
and
take when you get
general
back to
average,
you.
is not it's becoming more popular. We had the Ever Forward case 2 years
Right.
ago. That's involved in general average at the moment. But
Still.
it's more prevalent in Europe. It's just one of those processes that takes a long time.
Mm, great.
Yes, right.
Wow. Well, very eye-opening. Thanks so much for joining us today. Do you,
Absolutely.
any closing thoughts?
The only
Is there something
closing
I didn't
thought I
cover?
have is I
A nugget you want to add?
well, no, I was just gonna say I greatly appreciate you guys inviting me on. This is
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
hot ticket. You need to be on the Kipp and Mike show podcast. I mean, that's just the way to go. I mean, there's probably a line
I
standing
I was
behind me
thinking
waiting to get
quite
on there.
Well, wait a minute. Well, hang on. We're burying the lead here. We've got the port person of the year on our podcast. I mean, we should be on your podcast. I mean,
Hey,
that's
hey,
that's the deal right
that's
there.
once
right.
once once
That's
I
it.
take my lessons, from you guys on how to run a podcast, I will create a podcast and I'll invite both
No.
of you on my podcast.
So when Mike sent me the message today, it says, "Hey, Alex is going to join us," and I says, "No way! Are you kidding me? Like that's the he's port attorney. Like no way!" And so that was like,
Man.
"No, we have to." He knows we're like low budget podcast here, right? Don't expect
Yeah,
any frills.
he's like he
Now, I
messaged me.
I tell you
Hey,
what,
hey.
I appreciate the champagne that you sent over to my green room earlier. I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
that the way you rolled out the red carpet for me was
I
incredible.
mean, it was $5.36, but
Wow,
hey, what do you want?
but it
Like
tasted
Kip
like
said,
it
we're
was at
low
least
budget.
15.
Okay, there we go. Well, thanks so much
Uh,
for joining us, Alex. I really appreciate it. It's been incredibly eye-opening, and it's one of those things where you open up and you're, oh my God, I thought there were 3 chapters here, and there's 500.
Well,
And
yeah.
I'm sure we could do 10 podcasts
Well,
on this.
so what I've told a couple people is this will be my closing comment. What I've told a couple people is that the amount of legal issues that are going to come out of this litigation could make its own bar exam. That's how many legal issues. I mean, there's just so many legal issues.
Wow. Fascinating.
interesting.
So, how many? So, and because you said that, this just came to my head. So, how many? I don't know what the term is. I'm showing my lack of knowledge here. So, how many, attorneys in training or people in school are like wanting to, uh, you know, can they go to the court? It's public. Can they go and just kind of watch and
I can.
nuggets and learn and
Yeah. Yeah, no, they can. I mean, if they're following,
but I mean, is there a lot of that typically happening and something this big? Like you said, you could write a whole test along, So, I mean, is there a lot to learn? Or will there be people clamoring to get in there to gain some
I
nuggets?
would
Or,
say that there certainly were people clamoring to get in there today, and
mm,
this was a relatively, it was interesting because it was an emergency motion. and the issue that was involved. So that caught some people's attention. But there are other people that were there just to sort of, they want to hear about the Dali. They want to hear about this limitation of liability, and they want to see the attorneys that are involved. Is this an opportunity for law students from the University of Maryland, University of Baltimore that might be interested in maritime law to come learn about it and learn from attorneys that practice it? Yes, absolutely. And those people, they can come through the security gates in the first floor of the U.S. courthouse and go up to whatever courtroom is holding the hearing, and sit in the back. It's an open process unless it's specifically closed. I don't know that any of these will ever be closed to the public, because there's not national security issues or anything of that nature. But yeah, this is an opportunity. I mean, and there's this is a matter that happened in Maryland, and there's only so many maritime attorneys in Maryland. I happen to be one of them. But the amount of claimants and entities that are going to be involved with this, they're pulling maritime attorneys from all across the country to be part of this case.
Wow.
So
Impressive.
Very interesting. So, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's been eye-opening. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
All right, that was a really great interview with Alex today. To see and hear about some of the legal aspects of what's happening with the bridge. Speaking of the Dali, we've got a little video from an off-site visit that we want to share. So,
Man, that's going to be so cool.
yeah, pay attention to this and see what we do.
Hello everyone, Kipp Snow and Mike Singer here with the Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers podcast. We are out here at Pier 13 today on Friday. We're checking up on the Dali that you can see behind us. There's been some back and forth as to when the Dali is going to leave port, and so we came to check on it today. Mike, I've got some actual data and some points that help bring all of the listeners together to understand what we're dealing with. So we're going to
kind of paint a picture, like what size ship are we dealing with here?
Absolutely.
How does it fit into what comes and goes here from the port? So let's have. What do you got?
All right. So here's some things of what I think are some importance to understand about the ship. The MV Dali is a Neo-Panamax container ship, and it's Singapore flagged, and it was built in 2015 by the Hyundai Heavy Industries company in South Korea.
We could introduce some conjecture right here. So it's kind of a newer ship. People are thinking that, are they gonna just scrap the ship? I mean, I don't think so. I wouldn't you think they would repair it? I mean, we're not ship salvage experts or repair experts, but
right. So what's supposed to happen here at some point this weekend or the first of next week? The ship is going to travel down the Chesapeake Bay down to Norfolk to start its repair process for the next stage and whatever the journey is and what the company, the owners have planned for it.
Right.
So this ship is 984 feet long, and its summer draft is 49 foot and 4 inches. Now
that's a max, though.
That's correct. So the summer draft is actually the worst case scenario, the heaviest amount of weight that the ship can carry, and that when it's that full, it can have a draft of 49 foot and 4 inches. So that's why it's important for us to look at that 50-foot draft requirement.
Right. And we can talk about that because, I mean, if it wasn't for Helen Bentley and her foresight in that, I mean, these white cranes wouldn't be here. The ships would be half this size if it wasn't for her.
That's correct. So the deadweight tonnage, and so this is how much weight the ship can carry of cargo.
The typical cargo amount, how they measure ships.
Correct. Yeah. So this particular ship carries 116,851 tons. So that's the max. From a container perspective, It carries 9,971 TEU, so right at the 10,000 TEU mark. Now you may ask, or somebody might ask, what's a TEU? That's the acronym TEU stands for 20-foot equivalent.
Right.
So that's one of the 20-foot containers. So if you look over our shoulder, you see some long containers and you see some short containers. All right, the long containers are 40-foot,
Right.
and the short containers are 20-foot. So what this means is
About 5,000 containers that are normal length ones that you would see on the road.
correct. Or 10,000 20-foot containers,
Right,
or
right.
some combination of the mix. So,
Exactly.
so when you hear TEU, that's the 20-foot equivalent of the number of containers that it can carry.
And if I could add, she's a big ship, absolutely. But we do have ships that come here that are 14 and 15,000 TEUs. So she's pretty big, but she's nowhere near the biggest for the Port of Baltimore.
Correct. All right, so this ship actually weighs 213 million pounds. I thought
that all?
that's it, but that's just the ship.
Go on a diet or something? I mean,
It is propelled by a single low-speed two-stroke crosshead diesel engine. All right. Now, I got to
test me?
No, I am going to test you with a quiz question here.
Okay, what do you got?
Do you know where the name Dali came from?
I think I do.
Okay.
The ship was named after an artist.
Yes, I've actually got some information.
That's all I got.
Oh, okay.
That's all I got.
So the ship was named after the Salvador. It was named after Salvador Dali, who was a Spanish surrealist artist known for his technical skill, precise craftsmanship, and striking and bizarre images within his artistry. And so that's who the ship was named after. There's a sister ship that was
Named after a different artist, right?
correct, and was christened and named at the same time, coming off of the assembly line in 2015.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
And I knew that. I knew it was named after an artist named out, and I Googled it once and saw some photos in Google Images and really didn't spend any time there. I probably should.
Sure. All right, so it's been 12 weeks since the ship made its initial stop back in March here in Baltimore, and then we had the Key Bridge incident. So it's been 12 weeks now. I can't believe it's
March
been
26th.
Yeah. And so
You wake up and you're like, oh my God, what?
exactly.
Really? It just surreal. Couldn't believe. Almost still can't believe it. But
So a lot of those statistics are around the ship. I also found some interesting information that the Key Bridge, Francis Scott Key Bridge, carried 12.5 million vehicles in 2023, averaging more than 34,000 vehicles a day.
right,
And
I heard it was like 39 on weekdays and like maybe 31 over the week.
Sure.
If you average it out.
Average it out. So this is 15% of the total traffic for all three harbor crossings, and so this really, the Key Bridge really does have a major impact with the incident.
And it is so close to the port, right? If you've been around this area, so you have the Seagirt Marine Terminal right here, and then there's a direct line right to the Key Bridge past Dundalk Marine Terminal that they can use to get over the bridge and get to the western side to those other markets. And now just imagine all that is now funneled pre-1978, but we've got twice the population since. I don't know what the numbers are, but
So it still creates such a significant impact, not only in port operations, the local economy, employment, but also just the traffic management that's going around.
absolutely.
So there's just to kind of we've seen within the past 24 hours or so, we did do our podcast recording last night.
Yep.
And so we're gonna work on getting everything edited and out here shortly, but
Have this spliced in
have
there.
this spliced in there, correct. But we also learned that there were some rumblings or suggestions on when the ship may be leaving. Remember that this is a very fluid situation, so if there are changes, it's because they're trying to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed,
Right.
and that everything is going to work with trying to help the ship get down to its next port of call.
And I think we first heard was Saturday at 6. Then it became Sunday at 6. And now we just heard that it's on the schedule for Monday at noon.
And so that may also change also, but it's a real kind of fluid situation.
Absolutely. And when the ships come up on the schedule, a lot of times there'll be a little T there, which stands for tentative. And when it's tentative, you pretty much know maybe you shouldn't count on that because it's more likely to change. So.
And just from some quick observations, you can see that the Dali is still tied up at berth 1 and 2 out here at Seegert Marine Terminal.
Mm-hmm.
The lines are still tied up. You still got a barge that's out there that is in and around the environment.
Mm-hmm.
While we were setting up today, there was a couple of Coast Guard ships that came in and out. So they're still doing some things in order to get prepared. So it may take a little bit of time.
Right.
I know that there's a lot of people who are just curious or interested.
People just want to know. They're fascinated by, when you're sitting around watching this happen, the bridge deconstruction, if you will, and salvage, and you're watching them work on the ship, and then the ship finally moves, and then you're watching them pull the stuff off the Dali. Shameless plug, the port live stream that we helped set up. And so we've got, at least a couple hundred people at any given time just watching what's going on every minute of every day. So you're hanging on every little detail, and people are curious. So we want to try to get some information out, but we don't know everything, and it's like you said, it's a very fluid situation. So, but they were talking about 7 ships, 7 boats in total. So the Dali, 4 tugs, a Coast Guard escort, and then a salvage tug. And the job of the salvage tug is going to be to make sure nothing falls off, and if they see something fall off, they can mark it for recovery later.
Okay. So again, that's another reason of, hey, this is an extensive plan. We're still trying to figure things out. There's not really a precedence for us to follow, but we want to make sure that everything is done correctly, it's safe, the actual transport is safe,
right.
And that we get everything accomplished that needs to happen.
And another key point is that she doesn't have anchors. Well, she does. She's got 1 anchor, but the anchor locker and the winch were crushed by the bridge, so she can't use it. So there's no bow anchors that she can use. So if there's any problem, she can't stop. So this has to be planned from here and then right to the berth in Norfolk. So there can't be any hiccups, there can't be any stops. He's got to go directly there. Now, a little bit of crazy ship trivia is that when you look at the bay and you go, oh, she just, goes straight down the bay to Norfolk. Mm-hmm. But the channel doesn't go that way. She has to go out through the Bay Bridge Tunnel, make a U-turn in the ocean, and come back in the southern channel that gets you to Norfolk, which I find really interesting.
And I've done a little bit of work in the Norfolk area with some of the college-oriented trainings and the alike, and that is absolutely correct. That it's not just a straight shot all the way through. There's a lot of waterborne navigation that has to take place just to get to whatever shipyard or terminal that it may be stationed at after this.
Right. If it was an empty barge or maybe a tugboat, maybe they can make the straight shot.
Correct.
Or maybe some fishing boats. But as ships, they have to go out and then come back in, which I really find interesting.
That is interesting. All right, everybody. So that's just a quick update of what's happening here.
You want to cover the crew?
Yeah, I have some crew-related information here.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
So there are 21 crew members on this ship. The crew that was on during the incident, there was 20 crew members from India and 1 from Sri Lanka.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, and so, however, there's going to probably be some changes coming up. I think that if you've been following some of the court cases and things that the city and different jurisdictions are trying to address.
Right.
But now we've been told that 8 crew members are now allowed to leave the ship.
Right.
And
and go home.
And go home.
And go home.
And so these, I think that we learned from Alex, is that these are some of the workers who are doing some of the
maybe things not related to the engine room. Or...
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to have a crew that also comes in to replace some of those people so that they can continue on with the ship's journey from this point forward.
And then I saw in an article, video on YouTube from WJZ, that the rest of the crew is not able to leave the country. They're going to leave the boat, and they're going to put them up in apartments or whatever, and they're going to have to stay here for a while pending litigation.
Sure. So this is still a very very fluid situation. Everybody's trying to figure out all of the
Right.
all of the things that need to be addressed, and it's still, it may seem like a very long time. It's been 12 weeks since the incident, but that's really a short time. A tremendous amount of changes have been made with the channel opening, the debris clearing, getting the ship to the point where it's seaworthy, and then even the business and the legal side of things. There's just a lot going on.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, that kind of wraps up everything that we've got here.
Yeah.
Any final words from you, Mike, on this? Other than that it's hot and windy and.
It is. Well, what kind of animal did we sacrifice for this crazy?
No,
just kidding.
Yeah, my quick line says a squirrel or some type of pheasant. It's just a good mic for the windy day.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to send it back to the podcast now, and we'll finish up the rest of episode 8. But we're coming at you on site from Pier 13 in the Port of Baltimore. Mike and Kipp signing out.
All right, that was a great day there. Mike, let's you got some information regarding,
and we're back.
Yeah, let's go back. You got some information about the Bay Bridge?
Yeah, and I ran across this from a source at the Sun in an article, and a lot of us are fascinated or passionate about growth of the port. How do you grow the port? Well, a lot of people know that the port is restricted by the height of the bridges. The Key Bridge was one of them. They're all about the same height. They're within a couple of feet, 185, 182, around there. And so I am proposing and very passionate about, I want to see the Key Bridge built higher, another 20 or 30 feet. And some people are saying, well, why would you do that? That's stupid. You've got two bridges south of here that are still limited. I mean, that's dumb. Why would you build it higher? And so, but my point is that, the height of the Key Bridge was determined in 1970 or something. It was finished in 1978. So when you build a new bridge, why would you build it to a height that was determined 50 years ago and then restrict your port for the next 100 years? Because we're talking about design life for this new bridge is supposed to be 75. So why would you restrict? And then if they were to ever replace the Bay Bridges, then you've got a taller one ready to go. They can build the Bay Bridges taller. Now you can get bigger ships in. So that's just the way I think. And there's other people who think that, and it's kind of hard to get a feel. Do they want to build it higher? Is anybody advocating for it to be higher? Is the Coast Guard talking about it? Is the port talking? They are, but there's not any. So I ran across this today that says that the Maryland pilots recommend a higher bridge. Now, this was talking about the Bay Bridge. This was comes from a December 2023 harbor safety meeting about the Bay Bridge study. And Captain O'Connell inquired how the determination of bridge height would be made if a bridge is selected. Now, what they mean by that is when they're talking about the Bay Bridge replacement, one of the options was don't build a bridge. So, and it said, I'm just reading verbatim here. Ms. Lose responded that the MDTA is working with the MPA to ensure that any ships that would be potentially coming into port would not be precluded. The Maryland pilots have recommended a minimum bridge height of 228 feet, preferably higher. So to me, that's huge. That's big news. That's the first verifiable in writing news that I've heard that somebody is thinking about this.
Sure.
And it's verifiable. It's not, well, we know the Coast Guard is talking about it. Well, we know the port is talking about it. I mean, this is, real.
This is really
real data here. So
the if you really think about it, that's I do hear a lot of what ifs or what this should have been considered. Sure. In 1956, when Malcolm McLean came up with this idea of containerization, which really pushed that boom of these extremely large container ships, and then with the with the in 2016 with the third ditch of the Panama Canal opening up. Not ditch, but third lane. The
that's canal
big,
lingo.
It's a big ditch, cool. Yeah. Then they started to have that ability for these post Panamax size ships, which means after the Panama Canal opened and the size class of ships that could now transship the
transit the
canal there. Nobody was thinking about that in 1956. Hey, we need to start building bridges bigger for this. And so we can't really fault the fact that the Key Bridge, was built only at the height that it was, because there wasn't that consideration that you'd start to see even bigger ships coming into the East Coast. So,
yeah, and we'll have to do that as a little segment, like look at the growth of the size of the ships. And, they may have gotten twice as tall and twice as long, but when you think about, and I think capacity is measured in, what is it, deadweight tons? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm ship watching guy. I should know this. But it's more than just double the amount of, let's say a ship that's 200 by 32 meters. If a ship is 400 by 50 meters, it's way more than double. Yeah. So we'll maybe we'll do that someday. Look at the growth. And I mean, when you think about it, we didn't get our first large cranes, the post Panamax cranes, right, until 2012. Mm-hmm. That berth that the cranes sit on, berth 4, right, didn't even exist. That wasn't even done till 2008. We're so used to these big ships now, and these big cranes, but really it's a fairly recent phenomenon. So right. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. You should have thought of this, and how could you? And when really it's a quite recent phenomenon. Sure. The first big white cranes were 2012. So 12 years ago. 10 years later, they buy 4 more that are 20 feet higher and can reach further across wider ships.
I have a graphic that I use in class that shows the size dimensions and that comparison, and then compares it to some other like buildings and structures that we all know. And I'll see about trying to get that.
Let's do that. So, in closing, next week, let's look forward to, of course, shipping updates, Dali updates. And then, last week I talked about this, the last ship to leave, which was called the JY River, and how our friend Reverend Josh from the Baltimore International Seafarers went and helped them because they couldn't get off the ship for nothing. And I've got these pictures, and I just couldn't get it ready, so we're bumping that out to next week. But let's just go over all the good stuff.
Well, hold on a second, Mike.
Oh.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Sure. I was going to go and close this out today, and I was going to go tell you a maritime joke, but that ship has sailed. Now you can close this out.
All right. Yeah, I was thinking about that. We should put that in there as a regular thing. So Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers, we are a Facebook group with over 15,000 people, members in the Facebook group. We're on Instagram. We're on Twix, as I'm calling it now, as Balto Ches. So Instagram, Twix, YouTube, where you will see this podcast, this high quality podcast on YouTube. And then we have a website full of information, BaltimoreShipwatchers.com. Their ship schedules. There's a link to both of the live stream cameras that you can just watch from your home, watch the ships come by, try to figure out what's going on with the Dali and the bridge, and watch them pull stuff out of the. So all those links, some swag, maybe not this polo shirt, but some t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee cups. There's a swag link on there. So,
sounds good. And also we have
we're all over the place.
If you want to hear the audio version of this, we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you're dragging yourself through the tunnel every day like I am, it give you something to listen to on the drive.
That would be awesome.
All right.
So, and don't forget, give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell so you can be alerted by new podcasts. Yeah,
wherever the button is below us.
I think it's over here. Subscribe, hit the bell, and please give us a like. Feel free to comment on YouTube about things, suggestions for subjects for later. Give us some ideas. We do have.
We'll put it on the list.
We do have a big old bucket of ideas, but yeah, we're open to suggestions.
You ready?
All right. How are we doing this? On 3, and then we say it.
How about if we count it down?
1, 3, 2, 3, and then go.
Yeah, let's try it.
1, 2, 3.
Happy ship watching.
Happy ship watching.
You know what? Maybe we can get it professionally done. Get a coach. All right, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.